Welcome everyone to Stories to Share. We are exactly at the midway point this season. We've done 4. There are 4 after today. But today we have an extraordinary speaker, and I am happy to say that once again Sean Driscoll will be the moderator, and I will turn it over to him.
I'm going to use the lectern so that if you can't hear me, you can tell me that you can't hear me, and when Paul gets up, it will all be figured out. So I'm just going to talk. This is set up for him, and I'm not going to change it. But it seems like it's working pretty well. Good evening. Welcome to the Jaffrey Civic Center. This is Stories to Share. My name is Sean Driscoll. I'm on the board of the Civic Center, and I have the privilege of introducing Paul and acting as moderator tonight. How many people here tonight are here for the first time, having been to this? Wow, that's a wonderful, so thank you very much for coming out. We really appreciate it. Stories to Share is a series of talks, and we have them on the first Friday of the month. Like Joe said, this is our 4th season, and we're on number 5, so we'll keep doing this until June. These talks, the Civic Center wouldn't be able to do these talks without the support of our sponsors. Our sponsors are Bell Tates, Savings Bank of Walpole, and the Monadnock Ledger Transcript. Those are the sponsors of the series, but the building that you're in is supported by individuals and groups, and we're about to start replacing all the windows in the building, which you know is very expensive if you've done that at home. So please keep us in mind when you're giving to your favorite local organizations. The way this will work is that we'll have the talk, and then if time allows, Paul can answer a couple questions here. But at the conclusion of the talk, there will be a reception in the conference room, graciously provided by Nancy Beltate and Jean Duval. And there you can get another chance to ask Paul questions or talk about what you just heard. The talk is being recorded by our AV person in the back, Megan Raymond, and it will be available online in about a week. The previous talks are also up there, so if you haven't had a chance to go onto our website and look at those talks, you should check it out. One thing I want to just reemphasize is that these talks are filling up, and so if you're interested in any of the future talks, please make sure you register online and get a seat, because we don't want to have to. We hate turning away people, but we have a limited number of seats because of fire code and things like that. So please register if you're interested in coming to the future talks. The purpose of the Jaffrey Civic Center is to provide a public venue where people in the Monadnock region can pursue artistic, educational, and civic activities. And I think when I introduce Paul, you'll realize that he checks all 3 boxes quite beautifully for us. Paul has been building and designing custom furniture and architectural elements for more than 35 years. Originally from Connecticut, he was raised on a dairy farm and moved to the Monadnock region in 1983. He lives in Dublin with his wife, Mary. He became a juried member of the League of New Hampshire Craftsmen in 1986. He was the co-founder of the Guild of New Hampshire Woodworkers, which was in 1990, and he was the founder of the Monadnock Art Tour in 1996. He currently sits on the board of the Cornucopia Project and Max T Makerspace, where he sometimes teaches. So you can see, artistic, educational, civic. Let's give a warm welcome to Paul Tuller.
Nope, that one's twice. One, there we go. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for coming. This is a story that spans 50 years, and I have 45 minutes. So I'm going to try to get through time as quick as we can. So I did grow up in Connecticut, and I had nothing to do with Japan growing up. And we were on a farm, and we didn't know anyone who was Japanese. We never met anyone who had traveled to Japan, I don't think. And it wasn't until 1975, when I was in college, that I first was exposed to Japan when I took an anthropology course called Japanese Culture. And we learned about ancestor worship and friend circles and things like that. But the most memorable thing was on the first day, the professor said, "Does anyone know anything about Japan?" And another student chimed in, "They have those saws that work backwards." And the professor said, "No, they don't work backwards, they work differently." And that has stuck with me through my whole career, that things that are different are not necessarily wrong or backwards. And that was a really important thing for me to know. And so fast forward 5 years to 1980, I attended a woodworking conference in New York State, and there were people from all over the country, but one person was teaching a workshop on how to use Japanese tools, and he was starting a school in the Hudson Valley, and I got very interested in the tools, and Mary's going to help me out by, this is the first plane that I purchased in 1980. She's going to pass that around, and that is a traditional Japanese plane which has no finish on it. The surface that you feel is just from my hands using it for 45 years. So I was just captivated by the tools and started to use them. But at the time I was doing carpentry and running a sawmill on the farm, and I really didn't have much time to master them. So then in 1982, I had a crisis. I was down in Westbrook, Connecticut, 2 towns from Lyme, and in August, and in September, I got a fever, and my knees started to swell up, and I was had a hard time walking, and that progressed through the fall, and by January, I was very, very ill, and basically in bed, and then hospitalized for 3 weeks, and they released me after 3 weeks, 30 pounds lighter and with no diagnosis. I tested negative for Lyme disease, but I was pretty sure I had it, but at the time it was so new, 83, it was very new, and people didn't know it. So for the whole rest of that year, I was pretty much disabled. And a couple weeks after I got out of the hospital, I met Mary, and I couldn't work, but I ended up moving up to Dublin in the fall of '83, and by 1984, the fever had gone away, and I was left with a lot of limitations. My knees were really bad, my hands don't close, the joints are swollen, my wrists don't move much, but I started to work again, built a workshop, and started to do something different, because actually I have to go back one. So the thing about this character is the character for crisis in Japanese is 2 characters, and the first character that on the left is danger, and the second one is opportunity. And so I took this as a sign that I really should look at my disadvantage of having lost some use of my hands as an opportunity to do something different. And so I started to make things related to Japanese woodworking. I started making shoji screens, and I discovered the Japan Society of Boston, and they were putting out a little book called The Guide to Japan and New England. And for $75, I took out an ad and I started to get work in the Boston area making interiors like you would find in Japan. And so I had started to use the tools, and then in 1987, we heard that the Brattleboro Museum was having a summer totally focused on Japan. And they had taiko drummers and they had art displays, but the big thing was they were going to have a Japanese crew. They brought over 2 Japanese carpenters, Mori Yasuwada and Satoru Okazaki, along with a Californian, Carl Baris, who had studied in Japan and was fluent in Japanese. And they brought over a Japanese crew to build a Japanese timber frame, and then they had a New England crew build a New England timber frame, and they were going to put them both up on the same day in front of the museum. And I thought this was amazing, so I went over and I spent the day with the carpenters and got to know them a little bit. And then when the day came to do the raising, I went over, and I had taken a short intensive class in Japanese, so I could help sort the pieces and sort them out. And so, let's see if I can do this. So this is me with dark hair and a beard, helping lift the main timber for the house. And so I worked lifting parts and working for the day. And they put this is the Japanese frame going up. And there's one more shot of me, just because it's hard to believe so that's me standing there. But trying to look important, I guess. But I was helping when they needed to lift the parts and things. So so this is what they ended up with, is the New England timber frame on one side, the Japanese timber frame on the other. And they put plastic over the roof. There was no roof really, but just the timbers. They put plastic over the 2 frames and left them up for 30 days. And then they took them down, and the New England timber frame went to someone who was adding on to their house, and the Japanese timber frame went to a sculptor in Vermont named Michael Singer in Wilmington, and he was going to put it up on his property, but the carpenters, after 30 days, they were here 30 days, so they had cut the frame and got it up in 30 days. Then they went back to Japan and California. And so the next year, I was the only one around who had any knowledge about this project. And so Michael Singer contacted me, and he wanted me to put the building up on his property in Wilmington. And so I went over there, and they had made a few errors. Just really one error, but it was repeated, that some of the little posts that hold up the main beams were a little bit short all the way around, and they were in such a rush. I mean, it was unbelievable. They don't test anything ahead of time, and this has a very complex roof. Really wasn't a big mistake, but it was something that had to be corrected. So I figured out what needed to be fixed, and then Michael Singer wanted all new rafters, so it had a bigger overhang. I cut all new rafters. I put the roof together inside his barn, and then I put the walls together. And then he decided not to put it up on his property. So the pieces sat in his barn for another 15 years. And then in 2004, I got a call from the farm school in Athol, Mass. And they said, we have the parts for the Japanese house, and we were thinking about putting them up, but we're going to sell them at our auction to raise money for the school. Would you come down and give us a price on what it will cost to erect this on someone's site so that the bidders will know what they're getting into it for? And so I went down to Athol. I'm sorry, wrong tool. Went down to Athol, and there was the parts. 300 pieces in a jumbled pickup stick pile. And so I looked at them, and I felt very bad because I had seen how hard these carpenters had worked to create this building, and here it was. Everything was very dirty. That some of the pieces were warped and twisted. There were some spots where rats had chewed on the pieces. It was in rough shape, and so I looked at it and I said, well, someone's going to bid on this to support the school, but they really don't know what's involved in taking it from this to a finished building. And at that point, I really did know, because a lot of time had passed. I've been doing this type of work since 1985, so this was 2004. So I said, will you sell me the pile as is? And they came up with a price, and I paid it, and we loaded up the pieces and brought brought them back to Dublin. And at the time, I had built a barn on the property across the street from our house. We had a plan to build a house over there, but we hadn't built the house yet. We just had the barn. So we put the pieces in the barn, and my daughter and I washed every piece and sorted them and figured out which pieces had to be remade and which pieces were missing. And the next year, in 2005, we called on our neighbors to come and help do the raising of the timber frame. And so in July of 2005, we had the raising. And when I got the pieces, I had gone over to the Brattleboro Museum, or sorry, not the museum, but the library, and got all the newspaper articles about the original raising in Brattleboro. And I read in one of the articles that the center post, which is called the Daikoku beam post, which is the god of plenty, should stand on a stone in the shape of a tortoise. And I thought, oh, I should do that. So I went over to the West River in Vermont and found a stone in the shape of a tortoise and brought it back and incorporated it into the foundation, and then carved the center post to fit on that rock. It's hard, you can't see it now, it's sort of covered, but, oops. Sorry, I'm going the wrong way because I got the thing backwards. All right, here we go. Okay, so here's, I don't know if you recognize, there's Sam Green from Jaffrey helping on the raising day. That's the center beam. And I realize I'm missing a slide, but that's funny. All right, well, so this is pounding down one of the main beams. And they had this has a round timber top, which is called a flying timbered roof. It's interesting because I'd like to go, if I can, go back to just see if I can find that missed slide I must have jumped past, because there. Okay, so this is the center beam with my son Andy when he was 2.5. It's important to the storyline, so I had to go back, sorry. Looking at the main beam. Okay, so we did that. There will be more about that later. So got the timbers up, and then we had to, it had never had the roof deck had never existed, so we put roof planks on, got the roof closed in, and then we put cement board on the outside to protect it from the weather, and that it eventually got stucco on that. And but then the next year I built my house, so I had to leave this just as it was, and it was a number of years. We got the stucco done on the outside, and we got the plastering done on the inside, and we put down a rough floor, but we really I didn't get that much further because I was having to work, and it just was time and money. I didn't have either that much. So it wasn't until I retired in 2017 that I said I really want to focus on finishing the details for the house. And at the same time, an old friend of mine, Aleph Degize, had come back to the area, and he had been an apprentice with me in the early 90s when he was 20, but 20 years later he had been working for a big Japanese timber frame company in California. He was in the area, and he agreed to help me. So for the 2017, he came 1 day a week and would help me with things that took 2 people, and then 2018 he came 2 days a week, and then in 2019 he came for a 6-week spell to really finish things. But this is the start of it all, was putting storm doors on the outside to protect the shoji screens. And so these are ones that have a summer mode where the top comes out and their screens go in. And so those are protecting the shoji. And then the interior, I wanted a traditional, this is a little house. It's not a tea house. It's not meant to serve ceremonial tea. It's meant for a family of 4 to live in. And a typical house would have a sand pit that they would cook with. And I wanted to have something to indicate that, but I didn't want to have the sand pit because of fire danger, and the smoke goes up through the house and it's pretty sooty. So I got the idea. I saw this millstone in Peterborough in the salvage yard, and it was broken, but it was 54 inches in diameter, 12 inches thick. I thought we can use that to be the hearth, sort of. So we cut it straight, and we brought it in with pry bars and rollers. It weighs 2,400 pounds, and we brought it in to serve as the sort of focus for cooking area. And then we had to make the entry doors that have glass and are sort of intricate. And a lot of this is sorry, not too far. So the handle for the door is, a lot of details are sort of important, trying to be careful. And I was always wanting to try to do it in the best way that I could to respect the carpenters. So then we had to make a glass sliding door for the back to cover the round window. And then we added, we had to get custom tatami mats made for interior, but it took 9 months to get those custom made. And so in the meantime, we added a porch roof on the outside to protect the shoji. And we did the roof. We had the roof boards we burned. There's a traditional technique to preserve them where you char them. And so the roof boards are charred, and then we had round timbers going into round timbers and sort of different patterns to show the sort of possibilities of the work. And then another key element is to have the round posts stand on natural stones, and so we carve them to fit. And then there's actually a threaded rod that goes down through the stone into a concrete pier, and then the rod goes up into the wood and is bolted down. It's quite an involved process to get that all assembled and fit really nicely. And oops, I'm sorry, I'm just a little heavy-handed here. Then we added the porch, a little entry roof as well as the porch, and we tried to have that look a little different. And this was one where round meets round meets round, and all those things are scribed and cut by hand to fit perfectly, so they all join into each other. And it's a very time-consuming process. So these photos on the inside here are the nice ones, are done by my friend Nancy Beluccio, on-site photography from Marlborough, and she came and took some nice pictures. So this is the interior. And I'd like to point out a few things here. So traditional, it has a lot of the elements that are in any traditional Japanese house. So one is the tokonoma, which is it's called the beauty alcove. It's meant to be the sort of focal point of the room, and has a scroll, and typically there's a flower arrangement. And then often there's a natural post here. And that natural post is one that I grew the tree from a 6-inch seedling. It took 25 years to grow it. And then we harvested it and peeled the bark and put it in there. And it's a really interesting piece because it had a sapsucker bird had pecked all these holes in circles around it. And the tree responded by healing and making little bumps. Everywhere there was a hole, there's now a bump in the wood. And so it's it has a very interesting feel and look because the bird damaged it, but then the tree healed around and over it. And then there's a special table here. It's called a kotatsu table that has a well for your feet to go down into. And traditionally, the table can drop down into that space, and another mat can go down on top to give you more sleeping space in the family area. But this is not, the framing wasn't quite set up to be able to do that. And the top of the table I have is an old antique door that's a beautiful piece of wood with a painting on it, has glass protecting it. So I can't do that, but it has the well for your feet. And then this apron area is American elm that I colored to match antique chest that's tansu that's in the lower area. And there's the cooking indication here. And this is what's called a flying timbered roof with all these round timbers up on top that are asymmetrical, but then everything gets squared up at the top. And then this is the view from the lower level. You enter onto a stone floor, take your shoes off before you go up into the upper level. And this is looking out, through the door. And there's a tonsu chest on the left there that's an antique one. And then the other side of the upper level is a closet, which has these paper doors. They're called fusuma. They're 8 layers of paper on each side of a wood grid with handmade paper on the top. And I made those doors from scratch, and the shoji from start to finish. And the floor is Sitka spruce panels that we made to match the thickness of the tatami mats are 2 1/4 inches thick. So we had to make floor panels that match the thickness. So we made those. Up in the top here is this thing that's in many homes called a kamidana, which is a Shinto shrine where you would say a prayer for your ancestors. And the white things are folded paper, are purity symbols for the Shinto faith, which is the original religion in Japan. And then these are bamboo root carvings of various lucky gods that are also here. And then some baskets that are made from bamboo that are used for flower arranging. So these are all things you might find in a Japanese home. And then this is what it looks like. It looked like in 2019. We finished the house 1 week before my daughter was married on this lawn in front of it. And she was married on August 10th, 2019, and the houses were raised in Brattleboro on August 10th, 1987. It's sort of wild how things worked out. So we had the house pretty much complete, the woodwork pretty much done, but now we needed a garden to go with it. And it was 2019, so 2020 we got a concept design drawn up, but we couldn't get any work done in 2020. There's just nobody was able to help with the work. But then 2021 we started digging, and the plan included a pond, and the plan was for 1 level, but I had to make it 2 levels because of the way the terrain changed. And so we did some excavation, and then I wanted to create the shape. So this was like my own, crazy idea. I created the shape with cinder blocks, rebar, and concrete to give the shape that I wanted. And then it left a shelf on the top where I could arrange stones to hide the pond liner. So then after we got the cinder blocks and everything, we lined it with this felt to pad the liner and added a rubber liner. And then we had to arrange the rocks around the outside. And we got hundreds of rocks I had collected from our property. We have a 10-acre sort of open field, but I went every corner of the property, and they were all over the place, but as you would expect in New Hampshire. But it took a lot of work to gather them in, so I spent most of 2020 actually just gathering rocks. But we needed some heavy equipment for the bigger ones, and this is just working with the rocks and trying to build this pond. And so that's started in 2021, and I've been working on the garden ever since. So we got the sort of the rocks in place, and then we wanted a bridge to cross over. And in the Shinto religion, they believe everything has a spirit, but they also believe in evil spirits. And the thing about evil spirits is they can only travel in a straight line. And so I made a zigzag bridge because it's done in Japan all the time because the evil spirits can't go across the zigzag bridge. So once I heard that, I said, I have to do that. And so this is the zigzag bridge. Made with Bell-Tate's wood, actually. Pitch. That's Alaskan yellow cedar that I bought in Jaffrey. And then we had to work on the plantings. So this is digging up a 1,000-pound root ball of bamboo. I had this bamboo I had planted near the house because the garden wasn't ready, and it got really big, and Mary didn't like it blocking the window. So I finally got to a stage where I could transplant it down to the pond and in the garden. But when the backhoe picked it up, it just about tipped the backhoe over. And the driver said that it's got to weigh 1,000 pounds. It wouldn't do that unless it weighed that much. But we moved the bamboo down, and then I was doing stonework and for the path. And this is some basalt that came from Peterborough, and worked on old foundation stones we incorporated. And so this is where we got to in 2023, sort of gives you an idea. So you can see the zigzag bridge and the path coming through there, but we still had a lot of planting to do. So we were, spending this. We've been just planting every year for the last few years, and so this is Nancy Bluccio's photos of where it is this year. And so there you can see there's upper waterfall here, and then the water comes down through and falls down here into this bigger pond. And there's a lot of pipes and pumps, and it's fairly complicated. It's quite a thing. So, and then this is looking out from the interior onto the garden. And I really wanted to do the pond. One of the options in our design was to have a dry garden, but there's a thing about this is it's all your sense. It's trying to appeal to all your senses. So sound is a really important piece to this. And so having the sound of the water flowing and the waterfalls is a very big part of it. So I really wanted to sort of go all the way in trying to create the environment that would match this house. And this is interior, looking out through the round window, and the tree, this is the ginkgo tree that is there, that will get really big, but it's just, only been in the ground a year or so. And that's the table that's just one piece of wood across this whole thing. It's 3 feet wide, one piece of cedar, and then there's a painting on it of a tortoise, which represents long life. And another shot of the upper pond, and then a shot with the lower. And so that's where I'm at as of this last year. This year, we got to see what the deer ate and what the frost killed. And the thing with a garden is it's never done. Same with a wooden building, actually, because you're always having to work on maintenance. And I think this is. So this is my son Andy that you saw in that other slide. That's why I had to go back to it. He just turned 40, and this is his daughter, my granddaughter Colette. And she's 2.5, the same age he was when he was looking at that timber in 1987. So I had to go back to that slide because I would have spoiled this part if I hadn't. But anyway, that's just amazing. The time has flown by, and I have very much enjoyed it. And this is a rainy day, and this is my favorite time to see the garden. We had So it's just that easy. It has, my interest has spanned 50 years, and this is the 20th anniversary of when we raised the frame. So we raised the frame in 2005. This year coming will be the 20th anniversary of the house in Dublin, but it's many more years since it was originally cut in Brattleboro. And I really hope to just be very respectful of the people who had cut the frame and sort of the traditions of Japanese woodworking that go back hundreds and hundreds of years. And it is about feeling that things, wood and stone, have spirits that you have to respect. And it's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
That was wonderful. If you haven't gone, Paul also has a really good website at paultuller.com where he has a couple of different videos that show a lot of the hand tools and things that he worked with. So it's remarkable. We have time for a couple questions. If there, you can pick the questions. I'm just here to make sure that we can hear the question and get it on the video.
Yep.
I have a question. The original carpenters that did that, have they ever been in to see it?
No.
Do you have any way of getting a hold of them?
So theoretically, yes. However, I tried to, through the carpenter in California, Carl Barris, I tried to get their contact information, but he's a busy guy and he's not good about replying. And so we went to Japan for the first time this last fall, and I really hoped that I could try to see them there. They do know that the house was built. They were very disappointed when they heard that it was never put up, so the 16 years that it was in storage. They did hear about that through Carl, and they were very sad that their work, was just in storage, it never got built. But then they did hear that I had adopted the parts and had put it up. But I don't know that they've, so I hope to see them in Japan, but I just could not get the information in time. And they're about my age. We were all in our early 30s when this project happened in Brattleboro. And so they'd be sort of retirement age now, but I wasn't able to reach them yet. And I still hope that I can track them down and send an email. Because now I've been able to communicate with people in Japan with Google Translate. You can send, you can type and have it, translated. And so you can, communicate even if you don't speak Japanese, which I don't. So I hope to still someday get in touch with them. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Were the timbers, I assume, pine and cedar?
Yeah, so they were using...
What they would find in Japan?
Well, so they would use hinoki in Japan, and it's a little bit different than, they used white pine, which was the local wood here, white oak sills and white pine, and then the daikoku post, the center post was a cherry piece that was specially cut for that purpose. But the pine was very much in keeping with, it's not quite as strong as hinoki is in Japan, but that was definitely the one big thing was in Japan they would actually dry the wood before they cut the frame, and they had to work with wet wood, and they also, this was the amazing thing when I went to see them work. They wanted 5x5 posts, but they got 6x6s. And so they were at a site, in this outdoor work area. And in Japan, they have a machine that's like a circular saw, but it has a wide cutter for cutting grooves for the doors to slide in tracks. And so they were using this, it's called a grooving machine. And they were taking that grooving machine with a 36 millimeter cutter, which is like, over an inch. And they were hacking off 1-inch strips to make the thing from 6 inches to 5. So they were going over and taking off, these 1.25 inch strips and then replaning everything and resquaring it to be 5x5s. And you can't believe, there's no guard on the thing. It's it's wild that they were doing this. But I mean, it took incredible skill and unbelievable determination to do that as they sized the timbers down with a grooving cutter, and it was amazing. So, but anyway, the pine worked well, and but they were very shocked to see. They went into the woods and chose the round timbers for the top part, and then they hauled them out with horses and they peeled the bark by hand, and they were shocked that the trees in Japan are all numbered and there are people who are responsible for taking care of them. And they were shocked that our forests weren't managed, carefully. They were just left to grow on their own, and they found that very, disturbing almost. Yeah.
Have you tried sending pictures to your Japanese associates of your house? That would create a lot of interest on their part, I would think.
Well, I don't have a way to directly reach them. I only tried, there was this guy in California, but I've attempted to get the information, but he's not provided it, so I don't have a way to reach them directly. Yeah.
The tree that you grew for 25 years that the sapsucker damaged, what kind of tree is it?
That's a Chamaecyparis. It's a Chamaecyparis piscifera. It's when I got into doing this, I felt it was my responsibility to be planting trees because I was cutting trees for work. So when I first started out, I found a nursery on the West Coast that sold a lot of trees like you would find in Japan. And so I got several hundred different types of trees that would be, so I got, Koyama spruce and Yedo spruce and all these Asian varieties of softwood trees, and I planted them in my yard, and I had this giant tree garden, and then I moved them down to a piece of property in Connecticut that was part of my grandfather's farm and raised them down there for 25 years. But so it's in the Chamaecyparis family, which is the same as the hinoki that would be in Japan. So it's very close to hinoki, but it's a different Chamaecyparis.
So is this private, or considering you made for people to see it?
Well, it's on the back of our property. It's right, our house is in front and this is in the back. You don't really see it from the road, but so when I originally, wanted to do this, I was thinking, I could have it open to the public, but I'm sort of rethinking that because I couldn't make it handicapped accessible. It's sort of dangerous. There's a lot of stone and water, and so I make it available on a very limited basis. Like if people want to come, if they contact me, and I can arrange a time, I let people have a look, and then I have as part of the art tour. In the fall, I've had it open every, several years. I don't want to do it. I can't do it every year because I can't go on the art tour then, but I will probably have it on the art tour again, not this year because it's just not going to work out, but maybe next year. But if people contact me, go to my website, you can send me an email, say you're interested to see it, you can maybe set up a time. It's not, it's down in the back, and it's not. I don't shovel the path down there in the winter, and the garden is totally buried in snow, and so it's really in the spring, summer, fall time of year. But if you're interested, just get in touch. Yeah.
Do you and your family use this sometime?
Yeah, we've had dinner parties there, and we've slept there in the summer, and when we have the family crowd, people sleep down there. It's quite it's beautiful, and then we have people interested to show it to people what the feeling of it. But yeah, I'm down there every day in the warmer times I have quiet 20 minutes to sit there in that room and just be quiet for a little bit. Yeah. Yes.
Given Dublin's climate, did you have to make a variety of adaptations to foundation, roof, that sort of thing to protect the frame? Yeah, I mean, it's fair, reasonable overhang on the roof.
there was a big issue of what foundation I would have for it. And so I did contact this guy, Carl, in California when we were first starting, and I asked him, what would they have in Japan for a foundation? He said, well, they would dig a deep trench and fill it with river rocks on their side so that water would drain through, and then on the top they would have some kind of masonry top and then build the building. And so I wanted to try to sort of duplicate that idea, so I dug a 5-foot trench like you would have for a foundation, but instead of putting a cement all the way down, I put a drainage pipe in the bottom so it would stay drained. I filled that with 3-inch crushed rock to 1 foot below the grade line, and then I poured a 2-foot wide grade beam on top and big anchor bolts up through, and then we took black granite paving stones, and drilled those and put those over the anchor bolts and made a foundation of black granite. And then you can actually probably see them right in here. You know, this is black granite. And then the white oak sill goes on that, and we bolted it down nice and tight. And then I've just tried to re-stain or put some preservative on the wood. But it's been there 20 years, and it's actually looking pretty good. Yeah.
Last question? I think we can do 2 more.
Yes?
Yes, I just wanted to ask a couple of things about the building and the infrastructure. So I don't know if you have electricity in the building or whether you have water.
No water, no heat. I have one little electric circuit so that I can have a little bit of light, but that's it.
Okay, and then, so in terms, so it's really a summer house, you don't.
It's a storage shed.
One more question from Joe.
And the waterproofing on the roof.
It's just right now it's just asphalt shingles. That's what I could do 20 years ago, but this is why I'm not on the art tour. I'm planning to redo the roof with something a little bit nicer because it's 20 years there. It's about time to replace the shingles. So I'm trying to decide if it's going to be probably some kind of metal on it. Yeah.
Do you know whether this is unique in the United States?
Well, it's not.
Are there a bunch of these?
It's not totally unique. This guy, Peter Grilli, who was the past president of the Japan Society of Boston, brought a minka, which this was called a minka, but a minka is a farmhouse, it's a very big rambling building that are traditional farmhouses with giant timbers. He just brought one, he'd been working on it for years, down, and I think it's in Belmont, and they just erected it a year ago, and they're finishing it. But that's going to be probably the only one. So there is a traditional Japanese house in the Children's Museum in Boston, a 2-story cloth merchant's house that was given to the city of Boston by Kyoto, which is a sister city, I think in the 60s, possibly the early 70s. And it's inside the museum, and it's amazing. It's a full-blown 2-story house with tile roof and everything. And they let kids wander through it and experience what it's like to be in a Japanese house. That's the only one I know of previously in Boston before this one has gone up in Belmont. And there's very few on the East Coast. This was the only small traditional one that I know of. I've never come across another that's really done this is done in total traditional way. So I use the tools and the sizing and everything is done exactly how it would be done in Japan. It's from top to bottom. So there aren't many. I'm sure they exist somewhere, but West Coast, there's a lot. They brought over a lot of buildings. They have there's tons of Japanese carpenters, and they've been building new ones that are done totally traditional. And all the West Coast, from Seattle down to LA, there's tons of them. But on the East Coast, not so much.
That was wonderful. Remember that after we conclude here, we're going to have a reception. You can ask more questions there and talk there. I'm going to turn the floor over to David Beltate, the chairman of the Civic Center Board.
Hello, everyone. Those of you who've been here before know me. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
A small gift for you. I love this story, and I've heard it, this is maybe my third time, and each iteration is a little bit different. I love stories of projects of a lifetime. You know, it makes me think of that proverb, great men plant trees where they don't expect to enjoy the shade. It's kind of like that kind of project. Anyway, it's my job to alert you to what's ahead. Show's opening, coming ahead, is a behind-the-scenes look at Jaffrey's Meeting House, February 28th through March 28th by the Jaffrey Historical Society. Some meeting houses and historic churches of New England, February 28th, March 28th by the Jaffrey Historical Society. And also, Let's Keep It Real by Barbara Morse, February 28th through March 28th. These, I guess, are shows. Laura, reception for all the shows will be February 28th. I've said that enough times. With Historical Societies beginning at 6 p.m. and Barbara Morse's beginning at 5 p.m. On the 28th, we reopen. We're closed for renovation. Anyway, thank you very much.
Our next speaker
Oh.
in March, on March 7th, will be Michelle Stetler, who will be speaking about producing Broadway shows. Remember, it's already quite full. It's going to be a great talk.
Yeah,
So
please.
if you're interested,
Please register.
register.
Yeah. And thank you very much for all of you for coming.